Thank you
Good
so much
morning,
for joining
Wendy.
us. Thank you so much for joining us on our Lady Leadership series this morning. I cannot tell you how excited and honored we are to have you this morning to share a little bit about Carol Mangal with our listening and viewing audience today. So if you're ready, I'm ready, and off we go.
Sure, Wendy. Thank you very much. I am certainly looking forward to our chat.
So am I, Carol. So am I. So, in the last little while, I've seen so much happening in St. Lucia. I'm on the ground with you, with the St. Lucia Bankers Association and all of the wonderful things that you all have been undertaking in the last little while. And I'm hoping that some of the leadership traits that are really putting you on the map in that regard will come out in our discussions today. So let's start at the top in getting to know a little bit about Carol Mangal. So why don't you tell us, Carol, where you're coming from and where your journey has taken you to date?
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Well, in terms of where I'm coming from, so I'll start with my childhood. I am the firstborn of my mother and my father. I have two sisters. They both reside in Canada. I have four brothers. Three of them reside in Canada, and one is in St. Lucia with me. I had a very, what, as I would put it, an adventurous and a fun-filled childhood. Um, I was a very independent little lady. My grandparents used to call me a little woman. I can still hear my grandfather's calling me that. And Wendy, one of the things I did as a child, every summer between the ages of 7 and 10, I took, in those days, they had the trucks, they didn't have the transports that we have, but they had the trucks carrying people and goods. So I took those trucks on my own. My mother sent me to the bus stand, and I went to Digamiko, that's where my family's from. And I spent my summer vacations with my extended family. And that is where I learned to speak Patois. Um, when I was 9, my family, we moved to Maricel. I found we moved a lot when I look back on it. We moved to Maricel, where we kept a backyard garden. We grew a variety of vegetables. And on Saturdays, I was the market vendor. So my parents grew the crops and I went to sell it. In terms of my schooling, I attended the Ave Maria Girls Infant and Primary School, and later the Castries Comprehensive Secondary School. At the Castries Comprehensive, I was an avid athlete. High jump was my specialty. I actually was the high jump champion girls high jump champion from Form 3 until I graduated. I also took part in the girls marathon. I did that for 3 straight years. I never won. I placed second twice and third once. Actually, Carol Jamari beat me twice because she was older. The times I placed second, it was to her. I was also a long distance runner. My favorite track events were the 400, the 800, and the 1,005. I like sprinting too, but at that time there was too much competition. I remember Andrea Daw and Mary Butcher, they had come from the Antrepo School to the Castries Comprehensive. So they were the big guns when it came to sprinting. I also learned to play golf at the age of 12. I went to the Latop Golf Club to learn to play golf. And that's where I actually met my husband, Tim. Career-wise, career-wise, my first job, Wendy, was actually at the Royal St. Lucian. I was working in the front office department. I was a receptionist. I started my banking career on the 1st of November, 1988 at Barclays Bank. During that time, I've held a number of roles, culminating in my current role, where I am responsible for a team of retail sales, platinum and business banking officials. I educated myself during that time. I did my exams with the Chartered Institute of Bankers, the Canadian Securities Institute, and University of Liverpool. I've been married to my husband, Tim Bliss Mangal, for the past 29 years, and I thank God for him every day. He's the love of my life. I have two sons, Taj and Blaine, who I love more than I love myself. In terms of my community activities, apart from my banking career, Wendy, I also played a pivotal role as a sports administrator. I was the treasurer of the St. Lucia Swimming Federation. At that time, it was called the St. Lucia Amateur Swimming Association. For 4 terms, I was elected for that role. I was also elected for the role of president for 2 terms. And in February 2017, I won the nomination from a group of about 7 sports administrators and was named St. Lucia's National Sports Administrator for 2016. Well, as you know, I'm currently the president of the Bankers Association, and it's a role which I never saw on the cards for me. I never aspired for it. But I'm here, and I am really proud to be leading such an esteemed organization with a group of hardworking and committed persons who, from my vantage point, I find day in and day out, they give of their best for the betterment of their teams, their individual organizations, the country, and the Bankers Association. Along the way in my career, I've had 3 wonderful mentors. Sonia Sifle, she was my first mentor. Then Mary Popo and Mauricia Thomas Francis. They really helped to cement the person I am today in terms of my career. When I got better and mentors had done their job, I got sponsors. And believe it or not, Wendy, my first sponsor was your husband, Andy. His boss, Rolf Phillips, was also one of my sponsors. Later in my career, Ladisa James Williams, my recent manager, who has now moved to Antigua, was one of my sponsors, and also my managing director for retail in CIBC First Caribbean, Mark St. Hill. I consider him one of my sponsors. He has made things happen for me. And I must say, without those 7 people, I would not be where I am today in my career. So that in a nutshell is Carol Mangal and the journey I have taken.
Well, Carol, what a very impressive journey it is. A lot of things stood out for me. One of those being leadership came early for you, as you recounted being the market person in the family on a Saturday morning at a very tender age. You recounted taking the bus between the ages of 7 and 10 independently, and of course being considered the independent little lady by your grandparents and family members as well. So these are all very touching, and it certainly speaks to your journey to date and where you've been able to use those experiences in your adult life and to shape your career journey. So congratulations from your childhood all the way up to today. Tim, here's a little plug for you. Thank you for the support that you've given to this lady. Sometimes it takes the strong men who support our lady leaders so that they can then share their experiences of success. So thank you, thank you. And boys, we know we've taken a lot of your mom's time, particularly when you were younger. So it's nice to hear that she's still speaking of you with fondness. Clearly you understood the sacrifices that she needed to make in life. it was really nice for me to hear Andy Delmar's name. For those of you who did not know, yes, this is Wendy, Andy's wife. And it's nice to hear that there is still positive undertones when people speak about him, as well as the other industry leaders who helped to shape your career. And truly, I think that's what we are all called to do as we begin to grow as leaders, that we can look back on someone who we see potential in and really begin to nurture their leadership skills and qualities as well. So speaking of leadership skills and qualities, Carol, share with us some of your leadership guiding principles and success traits.
Okay. In terms of my guiding principles, Wendy, I will say I never forget where I came from and who helped me along the way. And I think that is important, gratitude. I also, Wendy, try my utmost to make people feel valuable. I make it my duty to sometimes add my value to others who people do not consider to be very important. So let me give you an example. So you may be walking along the street and somebody says, "Hello, ma'am, can I interest you in something?" Most people just pass these people by. I stop and talk to them. They don't know who I am, but I feel that by me paying attention to them, I am adding value to them. Another thing in terms of a guiding principle for me, Wendy, is I believe nothing happens before its time. And I say that especially in my career. There are roles that I applied for and I did not get. And later I got something better. And I try to tell my team that when opportunities come and they are not the successful candidate, it's most likely because there's something better for you. In terms of success traits, commitment. Commitment is important, and that is probably what has led to me being married to Tim for 29 years, him tolerating me for 29 years. When I commit to a task, Wendy, or for me to undertake a role or build a relationship, I give it my all. I do not shortchange my efforts. I do not waver. I see it through. And for me, commitment is the hallmark of my character. I also see resilience as one of my other success traits. When you treat me bad or you knock me down, I become stronger. You actually just incite me to perform better and to bring out the best of the best in me. And I can say to some extent, I benefit from adversity. And I will give you, I'll tell you a story. Wendy, when I became the president of the Bankers Association, actually, let me just say how I became the president. Okay, so in terms of how I became the president of the Bankers Association, so as you're aware, Wendy, you haven't been a former president, the bank take turns. It's a rotation basis, and it was CIBC's FirstCaribbean's turn. Ladisa James Williams became the president for a brief stint in December 2019. That was after Republic Bank, Scotiabank. And but she was then transferred, and there was a vacancy, as it were. But we did not have a new country manager appointed. So it was either we lost our turn and passed it on to the next person, or we appointed somebody. So being the most senior person next in line, I became the president. And I recall a month later, one of my directors visited, and and wanted to know why was it that I was the president of the Bankers Association. I was so shocked at that question. And she expressed her concerns that I was basically not good enough. I remember her telling me that other banks must be laughing at us, that you are the president. And to me, what was said to me was so unkind. And in my 32-year career, nobody had spoken to me like that. It was hurtful. But true to my nature, the individual simply gave me more willpower to rally the membership and to put the Bankers Association of St. Lucia on the map, to put it where it is now. In terms of another success trait, I will say integrity, Wendy. I believe that character matters. Being honest, being true to yourself and others is what, for me, will define me as an individual. So these are my guiding principles and my success traits.
Carol, thank you so much for sharing with us openly. I think that you've shared a couple of examples in there that would resonate with everyone, and certainly persons who will face those challenges. They're not akin to you. I'm sure that most persons who will listen in or look in on this video cast will be able to associate with some of what you've shared today. So thank you for sharing openly. I do want to pause here for a second to ask a couple deeper questions so that we can really ensure that everyone has an opportunity to benefit from where you have been and where you have come from and come to. You spoke a little bit about some of the challenges that you face, and one of them was being rejected for positions that you had expressed an interest in. And I know that we live in a society which is very fast-paced, and there's almost an expectation, an instant gratification. Persons come in and they want to climb that corporate ladder very, very quickly because they have the qualifications or they have the experience in another industry. And so we all have goals set for ourselves, but sometimes, like you rightly said, there's something better waiting, right? Help us to understand how you maintained that motivation, because it sounds like perhaps it wasn't a one-time circumstance for you where you would have applied for something once and not gotten it. How do you maintain the motivation and the winning mindset to keep going when you're faced with these challenges?
For me, Wendy, I think sometimes you have to go and look for something deep inside of you to sustain you. I'm not sure if you fully understand what I mean. But a lot of it comes from within you. Just the willpower to say, this is just a minor bump in the road. Let me move on. Let me learn from what has happened and better myself for the next opportunity, the next challenge.
Yes, I can certainly agree with that, that sometimes you do need to step back a little bit. Examine what's really happening, examine your own goals and how you've prepared yourself to ensure that you are the successful candidate. Sometimes we say, we've been in this job long enough, I know how to do it. But what have we done to say that I can put my hand up and ensure that the right person sees it? So you did speak about sponsors earlier. What role does a sponsor play in your success, in moving you along the fast track or tracking your success to fruition?
Well, a sponsor is that person who basically, when your name is mentioned, will say, yes, that person can do the job. That person, if you give them the opportunity, you will not regret it. That is the role of a sponsor, somebody who advocates on your behalf. However, you don't get sponsors just like that. You have to build a relationship, and the sponsor has to be aware of your skill set. They have to know what you are capable of. they're basically backing you. So you will not want to back something or someone who you are not sure what to expect from them.
Great, great. So in our modern day conversations, we hear a lot about mentorship and we hear a lot about ensuring that you have someone who will mentor you. But I think Carol really put this into perspective for us in terms of what the steps to success really can look like. And perhaps for the leaders listening out there, this is something that you would want to ensure is ingrained within your own industry. That the next step from the mentorship is ensuring that we have sponsors in place when we recognize specific skill sets or specific attitudes that would work well within the core values of the institution and the institutional goals. So Carol, thank you so much for sharing that, perhaps a fresh perspective that we can all benefit from. The next question that I want to jump to is really an industry type question. And what your experience has been. I know that you said you were one of the lady leaders in the industry at your specific institution at a very, very high level, right? So what has your experience been as a lady leader in the industry compared to your male counterparts? Have you noticed a difference in the way that you have been treated throughout your career or the way that you have moved over along the corporate ladder within your institution?
Wendy, for me, the thing is, my direct leaders from, let us say, about 2009 to 2019 have all been females. So I would not have had a different experience from my male colleagues. And I'm sure you will remember in, I think it was 2015, the World Economic Forum, they released some statistics where St. Lucia was ranked third in the world in terms of the highest number of women managers. I think we were at 53%, and Jamaica was first with 59. So I guess at that time in my career, there were more women leaders, and there's still, right now, I think the statistics is about right. However, Wendy, I vividly recall one instance earlier in my career where I applied for a role and I was not the successful candidate. And the feedback I got as to the reason was it was neck and neck, but I did not say that one of my skill sets was that I had good verbal skills. And it was a lateral move. I just wanted to come out of sales. And I remember months later, my manager, Mary Pope, at the time, she said, Carol, what did they say in terms of why they didn't give you the job? I said, well, they said I didn't say I had good verbal skills. And she said, but from the time you open your mouth, people will know that is one of your skill sets. And I then realized it was the reason I did not get the job. In fact, she explained that to me was because the country manager at the time simply wanted a male assistant. I guess he was more comfortable with a male personal assistant. That was what the role really was. But you know, Wendy, that leads me to another guiding principle. What's not there for you, you will not get it, and vice versa. However, I must say I am aware of there being instances where men who cannot even perform the role are given the nod for leadership positions ahead of women who have much more experience. And in fact, in a lot of cases, those men are not even considered leaders by people who know them best, yet they are given the role ahead of women. And the end result, what you normally see is that they make a lot of rookie mistakes at a high level, but it is what it is. And I think that once organizations look at capabilities and not necessarily gender, they will get the best of the best out of their employees and their leaders.
Absolutely, Carol. And I think, you know, in this day and age where we have our first sitting female vice president of the United States of America, if that in itself does not tell us that across the board, across all sectors and across all industries, the gender conversation is a lot less meaningful, perhaps, than it ever was. We have ladies going to the moon and while raising their families as married women. But you're right. I think that strides have been made. I think certainly within the local context, the solution context, like you rightly said, there is evidence of the fact that this is becoming less and less of an issue. However, there's still a lot of work to be done, you know. So let me go back to your first answer, because I thought we may have an opportunity to address it, and I think this is a good segue. You indicated your two sons, and sharing the profession with you, I know how demanding this industry can be, and certainly in the last decade, if never before, we've seen the pace of change that is breathtaking, but it is breathtaking. Share with us how you've managed to balance being a leader, taking on more senior responsibilities, raising a family, and maintaining a 29-year-old marriage. And I can tell you, people, from my personal experience, when I see these two youngsters, the love flame is still being fanned, and it's alive and well. So congratulations. So Carol, share with us, for young moms who are coming in, and even single moms who are in industry, you know, let's talk a little bit about managing career, managing life, and ensuring that we have some sort of balance for success.
Okay. Wendy, well, one of the things I must say is that I had my children early. And at that time, I did not have very demanding roles in the bank. So I had more work-life balance. I recall before my children came, I played a lot of golf. Every Saturday, I played golf with my husband and my friends. When my children came, they became the centerpiece. My children, to a large extent, have grown. My first son is 26, my second is 16, and you would notice the 10-year gap. That's when I did my studies. So I have kind of set out a map in terms of when I have done things. So I have compartmentalized it. So that has really helped me to give various things the attention that they deserve. I have also employed help to help me, like with my domestic chores and so on. So I'm not bogged down. And I have tried as much as possible to spend a lot of time with my kids and my husband. Because at the end of the day, Wendy, when you go home, that's who you have. When people die, the organization simply send a reef and move on. Who miss you most? The family. So for me, I think my job is secondary to my family. In fact, from time to time, I say, boy, I'm only doing this job for my children.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Carol. And part of what I heard there that contributes to you being a great leader in the home and in the workplace is planning. You know, so like everything else, it's really, really important that we plan for all of the successes that we will not hope to, but that we will achieve. But there must be a platform, there must be a foundation for that, and that comes out of strong planning. And of course, support. And you're right, I heard you mention ensuring that you have domestic support, whether it's paid or family or whatever the case may be. As you begin to plan your career, and if it is that you've chosen this industry as your career home, else you have to show that the support that you need to ensure that the time that is needed to be dedicated is available to you. So Carol, as a lady leader, tell us what it is that you are most proud of accomplishing? And also, what has been one of your greatest, I don't like to say challenges, so I'll say opportunities within the industry? And what have you learned out of those experiences?
So for me, Wendy, what I am proudest of is the fact that every team or every organization that I've had the opportunity to work with, especially as a leader, I have left it better than I found it. And that adds value for me. I believe in doing things as a team rather than individually. For example, in the Bankers Association, we would not have made the progress we have made if we had done things individually. For instance, collectively, we dealt with the COVID-19 protocols, the moratoriums. Well, you would have been part of those discussions too. Financial Information Month. In fact, our country manager from Royal Bank, who was heading the Financial Information Month activities for us, indicated that the ECCB said they wanted to put it on record that this has been an exceptional year for St. Lucia. St. Lucia they have been trying for years to get St. Lucia to partake in Financial Information Month. And I'm thinking because we did it collectively, despite the fact that fundamentally we are competitors, we were able to achieve so much more. You talked about challenges or barriers in my career.
Yes.
In terms of that, Wendy, one of the things I find that you see in organizations, there are many people, in fact, many leaders who are threatened by great potential. I'm not sure if you can identify with what I'm saying. I think they prefer to be leaders of followers rather than to be leaders of leaders. And I'll give you another story. I recall one year, many years ago, I was the branch manager for our Viewford branch of CIBC First Caribbean. And my direct manager went on vacation. And I was given a short stint to act in her role. And one of the tasks I had to perform was to make a presentation on retail banking at our country management committee meeting. I had never been to a country management committee meeting, but the country manager called me and said, you have to come and represent. And she gave me an idea of what was the expectation. So true to my nature, I prepared. I got my statistics, my historic figures for sales, my projections for the next few months and so on. And I made my presentation. And then the country manager said she wanted to put it on record. She wanted the records to reflect that this was the best presentation ever by retail banking. Well, Wendy, the other leaders on the CMC rolled their eyes, and I'm very observant, and I saw it. So when my leader returned, normally, somebody hold on for you, you call and say, how are things? Like a little debrief. That didn't take place. I called, she was too busy for me and so on. And as if she got cold with me. I didn't know what happened, but then I never got the opportunity to act again. And it was only years later, Wendy, I learned that the reason I did not get the opportunity ever again was because the people who rolled their eyes told her what the country manager had said in terms of my presentation. If I was in her position, I would have handled it differently. I would have been proud of the fact that her direct report handled, represented her well. And that's what, to me, leaders should be able to to come to terms with, when people represent you well. I remember your husband, one day somebody was telling me, they couldn't wait to see who Carol Mangal was, because all Andy was saying, oh, Carol knows how to do that. Give Carol a call. You know, and that's what good leaders do. The lessons I have learned from that, Wendy, I never want to be that type of leader. And I must say, I do not feel threatened when my direct reports have potential. In fact, as a leader, I recruit people who have potential. And my job is to help them develop it further. I like to tell people, Wendy, I love farming. And as a leader, my job is to grow leaders. But we all cannot have the same character. And that is just how life is.
Yes, yes. Carol, you've made some really good points there. But I certainly want to pause on the fact that part of our responsibility as leaders is to ensure that we are building the next generation of good leadership. The other thing that I think I heard there is how you recognize and reward your team members is also very important. As a leader, it's important to understand what motivates different individuals. It's not the same for everyone. And some people really thrive on the very simple, say, job well done. And in my previous life as a coach, one of the things that I remember learning and living is when you say job well done, be specific about it. What is it that the individual did? And what was the result that came out of it that made you pause and recognize them for the behavior? Because it's really easy for us to recognize when things are going badly and to call people out on it. But a true leader will be able to balance that and be able to find the good that will encourage the individual's behavior, because at the end of the day, it makes our jobs so much easier. It gives us the opportunity to be strategic in moving the vision and the mission of the organization along. So Carol, thank you for sharing that with us. And to all of those of us who will experience moments where perhaps we feel that we've been bypassed, or we feel that our contribution is not welcome, that's not an opportunity for you to take your foot off the pedal. It gives you the opportunity to ensure that you are zoning in on and honing your skills to ensure that you continue to do what it is that you know you're being asked to do, or engage your leader to say, how do I ensure that at the end of this experience, I surpass your expectations? And these are conversations that we really should be having for our personal development as well. We are responsible for our success. So Carol, thank you for continuing to plow forward, even when you had some naysayers saying, trying to hold you back, because the result is evident, and congratulations for moving through it all. So the next question that I want to ask you, Carol, is what advice would you give to younger women, young professionals who are entering or already part of the organizations, the institutions, and the sector in what is perceived to be a male-dominant field? But maybe I should step back first and ask you, do you consider that we are still operating in a male-dominant field? And if yes, what is your advice for our young lady?
The statistics are clear. I think to a large extent, we are still operating in a male-dominant field, but we've made movement. My advice, I would say, simple things, Wendy. Work hard and work smart. Keep your knowledge current. That is extremely important. If you are just entering, I would say seek out mentors. Make meaningful relationships. Engage in community organization. Work is not all. You need to be well-rounded. And I would also say, as a word of caution, Wendy, you will not make progress by trying to pull down or tear down others. And above all, remember the cream always, always rises to the top. That's what I would tell people entering the workplace.
Fantastic, fantastic. You gave me a little plug to say, for those of you who haven't listened or perhaps haven't made the connection with our introductory song, when the Ladies Leadership Series launches, it's Creme de la Creme. And that is exactly to Carol's point that we have chosen. You didn't even realize it, Carol, did you? Perhaps we have interviewed some of the identified creme de la creme, the cream of the crop. But that notwithstanding, we know that within the organizations, there are so many other individuals that we may have missed or have not quite gotten there yet. This is your call to stay inspired, stay motivated, stay focused. You can achieve it. All of us have, and we're sharing with you today little nuggets of, how have we been able to overcome some of the challenges that you may or may not face if you're fortunate enough. But the message really is keep going, you will get there. If it's there for you, according to Mrs. Mangal, it's going to be yours. So just stay focused. Now, Carol, you spoke about a little bit about keeping your knowledge current. Let's talk about current activities or current events that are shaping the world as we know it. And predominantly, the conversation has revolved, certainly in St. Lucia for the last 9 months and perhaps more globally for the past year, around the dreaded COVID-19 pandemic. Tell me, what has COVID-19 taught you about you as a leader? And what are some of the lessons that you can take away from that have strengthened you during this period?
While I have always worked well under pressure, COVID has allowed me to showcase that. But it has also taught me that I should not give in to pressure. And Wendy, I say that because you will recall when the government requested that the association membership assisted the salary bonds. This was a lot of pressure on me and my members. But in the end, Wendy, I wanted to ensure that whatever decision we made was not against my better judgment. And Wendy, I will not delve into it further, but as we say, the rest is history. So COVID has taught me, yes, you need to make good decisions, but do not make them against your better judgment.
Okay, fantastic. And there's a lot to be said for, I suppose, what older bankers would consider gut banking. You always follow your instinct. You always listen to your gut. And I remember when I started my career as a sales officer in banking, that was one of the things that my leader then said to me, Wendy, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Or you need to dig a little bit more to make sure that when you put your signature on that dotted line, you can explain it to whomever questions it. So Carol, I hear you. I fully appreciate that. So let's get to a little lighter side. I know that you said before your children came, you would have been found golfing most Saturdays. With the plate like you have yours stacked right now, where am I likely to find you on a Saturday morning at, say, 11 o'clock? What would you be doing?
Well, not on a golf course anymore. I don't think I can afford it. But Wendy, believe it or not, you will find me at our farm in Maho, cooking pigtail bouillon with red beans in a large Indian shordia on my fouye, which is the freestones, speaking only patois with the people who are working for us, and dressed in all the gear of a modern farmer, my boots, my hat. And Wendy, this actually is my work-life balance now. And especially at the stage I am in my life, it's very therapeutic, just the whole area, the atmosphere. So that's where you will find me.
So Carol, apart from being very engaging Tell us a little bit about how you encourage and empower your teams for success. I know that earlier you said you ensure that every team that you have worked with, you leave it better off. Tell us exactly what that process is like for you.
Okay, so Wendy, let me use my career. In my role at CIBC First Caribbean, I lead our retail, platinum, and business banking team of lenders. One of the first things I try to do to encourage and empower my team for success is I try to create the atmosphere where people are encouraged to perform and they get the opportunity to build their confidence. So that is one of the first things I do. I support my team. Before I assign you a task, I make sure you know how to undertake the task and you have the tools to make you successful. Also, I do not assign people tasks that I'm not willing to undertake myself. And there are a lot of times where I have to roll up my sleeves and do the work with my team, simply because the volumes are high or staffing is low. Case in point, the moratoriums. That is something, because of the volumes, everybody has to be involved. There are times when if a loan is urgent and I don't have enough staff, I have to do the loan myself. So these are some of the things. Another thing I do, Wendy, is I defend my team, especially when there is value in doing so. I don't like people to give my team members licks. Let me do that myself in private. I also give them leeway to make decisions, like offering a reduced rate to a customer. Of course, within certain parameters, you don't want them to give away the whole shop. And that is to avoid loss of business. Because I know when my team is successful, I am successful too. Another thing, Wendy, we all have top performers in our team. I provide my top performers with tasks and opportunities that will help them to grow and develop, because you cannot treat your top performers like you treat your poor performers. But I must say, Wendy, above all, I recognize my team members, I reward them, and I make it my duty to shower them with praise in public. So I think for me, that has worked.
Fantastic. I think there are certain things that certainly I would recall when I lived in branch as well, ensuring that you recognize in public and you inspire change in behaviors in private, you know. To put it very gently and very softly, you ensure that the individual feels supported when amongst their peers, certainly, and corrective action is taken or dealt with in a private setting. It's you and me discussing opportunities for growth. Carol, if it's at all believable, we're beginning to get to the end of our discussions, our chat here today, and certainly it's been very insightful, but there's still a couple more questions that I want to ask so that we get your take on. When faced with challenges, opportunities, what are your go-to strategies, or how do you approach those to ensure that your end result is continued success or continued growth?
Well, Wendy, first of all, depending on the magnitude of the challenge, I would say the first thing I do, I pray for guidance, shuttle prayer or something. I think about the situation, I consult with others, especially people who would know a little more than me. I focus. I also do a lot of research on things, trying not to reinvent the wheel. And then I determine how best to handle whatever is the challenge before me. But that in a nutshell is how I handle challenges.
Right. So what I heard, Carol, is you don't go rushing in without all of the necessary information. So you equip yourself, you take a minute to assess it from all of the angles. You consult those who have gone before you. And again, I suppose your mentors and your sponsors really come in those instances. So thank you for sharing. Earlier, you spoke about your mentors and you spoke about your sponsors. But now I want to ask you, who inspires you, Carol? And why this individual?
Wendy, my mother, Lucretia Compton, she actually had me when she was 17. She was left to bring up a baby on her own. My father at the time migrated to Canada and he got married. She held blue-collar jobs in hotels. And Wendy, she only stopped working when I was working, when I had already started working for a while. Many years later, in 1997, when she was already a grandmother to my first son, she migrated to Canada. And Wendy, with no high school diploma, she studied to become a nurse's assistant. She became a Canadian citizen. She lives a very healthy and God-fearing lifestyle. Imagine that Wendy, my mother, has never had a toothache. She has all her original teeth at her age. And she even takes care of me, a grown-up as me, as old as I am. Um, I recall Wendy, in 2018, I had an emergency surgery. I was critically ill. It necessitated me being transferred to the ICU and eventually to Martinique. My mother was in St. Lucia at the drop of a hat. She sat on a chair at the Tapia Hospital while I was on the bed ill. My mother means the world to me, and I just love my mother dearly. I don't know what I would do without my mother.
Oh, Carol, that resonates with me because I think, for the most part, those who know me know that my best friend for life has been my mom. So Lucretia Compton, big shout out to you. You've raised a strong woman, and I'm sure I don't need to give you permission to be very, very proud of her. But certainly an inspiration to the many, many single women that we have in industry to say, keep prodding along, keep focused. You don't have to be a statistic. Your child does not have to be a statistic. And if they have to be, they can be one like Carol Mangal, who has certainly defied a lot of odds. She spoke earlier about her high jump career, and in so doing, breaking, shattering glass ceilings. I think that we should all aspire to these sorts of positive stories that come out of what would otherwise be classified as, statistically likely to become a challenge. So Carol's story has certainly been everything that we had hoped it would be, and perhaps a little bit more. We gave you patois today, right? Carol, keep moving forward positively. There's certainly a lot to have been learned out of today's series. And so I want to give you the opportunity to close us today with one last bit of advice for young ladies in the sector, in the industry, and more generally, if you feel inclined to.
Similar to what I would have said for those entering, I will say, be the best you can be. Keep your knowledge current. That is important. Love yourself and others. Make time for friends and family. That is very important. Another thing I would say is challenge the norm when you believe there's value in doing so. Become a mentor and a sponsor. And finally, I will say never, never shut the door behind you. Leave it open for other females to enter, because very often we see people who have made progress, they do not want others to make progress too. So never shut that door behind you. Remember who gave you opportunities, allow others to benefit from you, and to benefit from some of the opportunities that you got before them.
Absolutely. Truer words have never been spoken. And in terms of ensuring that you keep that door open, and if for any reason in your journey you pass by and notice that door has been closed or stands ajar, be the one who holds it open for someone else to walk through. Continue to pave the way for our lady leaders, and generally our leaders, doesn't matter ladies or male. Carol is the mother of boys, so I'm sure she too has an affinity to ensuring that everyone moves together positively. And I share that same desire that as a society and as a people, we all continue to move forward in a positive way. So Carol, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. I certainly think that it was time well spent, and I hope that you feel the same way as well.
I do, Wendy, and thank you. I enjoyed the chat.
Fantastic. So this has been another one of our episodes where we have brought you some of the creme de la creme in the banking industry. I certainly hope that you would have benefited and enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed bringing it to you today. And I continue to ask you to look forward to other initiatives that the CAB will undertake in the hopes that we will continue to add value in the industry, in the sector, and certainly where you sit today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we continue to look forward to chatting with you, engaging with you. And if there's anything that we can do that you're looking forward to, please reach out, let us know, and we'll try our best to make it happen. Thank you so much, everyone.